Greetings, everyone, and thanks for taking this time to spend with us this evening. First of all, my apologies for the late start due to technical difficulties. And welcome to our wonderful Open Up podcast, where our special guest today is Dr. Susan Schwartz, Jungian analysis and author of The Absent Father Effect on Daughters. Hello, my name is Dipchand Ramcharitar, and I'm the Outreach and Development Coordinator here at Voice of Men 360. We are based in London, Ontario, Canada, and basically we advocate for and try to assist men and boys as much as we can. That's our primary function. However, we're open to assisting other demographics. For example, we've had collaborations with the Malton Women's Council, and as well we've been involved with assisting the Indigenous population surrounding London, Ontario. We are part of International Men's Day. International Men's Day can be found around the world in 90 odd countries and have been in existence for over 21 years, also seeking the interests of men and boys. So here we go. Before we get to our special guest, I would just like to run through the disclaimer. We would like to remind you that Voice of Men 360's mission is always delivered with good faith towards peaceful harmony. The views and opinions expressed in today's episode are those of our speakers and do not necessarily represent Voice of Men 360. Our organization engages in discussion forums to offer inspiration and create awareness of the issues of men who wish to overcome their life challenges. We are not providing medical or therapeutic advice. Should you require that type of assistance, we recommend you contact a medical professional immediately. If you have any questions or concerns about today's episode or any Voice of Men 360 content, please email us at info@voiceofmen360.org. And on with the show. Today, as I said, let's welcome Dr. Susan Schwartz. Susan, welcome. We're so happy to have you on the program.
Thank you. I am very pleased to be here.
So let's dive right in. And first of all, can you give some insights into the Jungian method and how it has helped your clients?
Well, actually, the analytic method is something where the person, we'll say the father or the son, comes in and has problems with whatever they have problems with. And the point is to get deeper beyond the presenting problem. So it's to answer the presenting problem, but also to have people be able to reflect and think on themselves and their lives and to make meaning out of what has happened to them in their lives so that they will develop the power, if you could say, or the fortitude and the strength to be able to continue on consciously. So actually, Jungian work includes the unconscious and the conscious. And that's where it's a bit different than some other forms of therapy.
So do you find that you have good success with that method towards men and boys?
Well, of course, I'm going to say yes. But that's not just because it's me. It's because actually most people are seeking for meaning in their lives. And once you say, well, yes, and you honor their problem, people feel so pleased to be heard and recognized and to go beyond the symptom into really the depths of themselves. So have I had good success? I would say yes. Not everyone, honestly, not everyone, but many, many people with a variety of symptoms have come in and have felt restored, meaning their personality more solid.
Yeah, well, that's good to know. I mean, if it works, keep on doing it. So good for you. And secondly, what inspired you to look into the effects of father's absence in a daughter's life from a Jungian perspective?
Well, because I'm a Jungian analyst, that would be my perspective. But what happened was, over time, the people who come to see me, women, I would say also men, but women in this case, because of the daughters, when I would ask them about their fathers, they had very little to say. The father was either not present, or he was present and emotionally absent, or he was repressive, or he didn't know how to talk emotionally. And the daughters only usually came up with one line. He was there, he wasn't there. They had very little to say. And I thought, what is going on? And so I would pursue it. And what I found out was that there has been, through the generations and many cultures as well, a lack of the father presence, meaning lack physically, emotionally, mentally, psychologically, relationally. And that in the absence, there was a desire to get it filled or answer it. So it's not just the absence to pay attention to, it is to pay attention to finding presence and finding one's own self in what has been difficult.
Okay. And how is a daughter's sense of identity and self-worth affected by that absent father?
Well, it affects one's body, mind, and soul. So the father, who, when he doesn't pay attention in the correct way, will affect the confidence that the daughter has in her own self, her body self, how she takes care of herself, how she views her intellect, her career, her decisions about how she wants to live her life, and how she is living the process of going through life. And so his absence is going to affect her throughout her existence. Let me also add, because there are many single parents and
Right.
families with a single parent. So
Right.
so it's to include them and to not castigate them, but to say, because there is an absence and it is felt, address it, look at it, talk about it, reflect on it. Again, it's not to blame people if they're single parents raising children. It's more to understand the difficulty of it and to empathize with it, but also to recognize something isn't there. Something isn't there. And to really make it conscious.
Very good. Yeah, you got to dig deep to find out what's going on because
Yes.
generally, when people are in some sort of pain, it it's not they don't readily open up. So sometimes you have to use your guide and your expertise to get deeper into the root of the problem, and then you can address it more, effectively.
Yes.
So how now when it comes to other men in general, how does a lack of a positive father figure influence a daughter's relationship with men in general and her expectations of masculinity on a whole?
It's going to affect her in many ways. Uh, some daughters turn against men or the masculine. Some people will accept that as a part of themselves. I mean, we all have a range of feminine and masculine inside of us.
Right.
And so I think it's to recognize that. When people are against, I always question that. What does that really mean? Why are you down on so and so? And how has that? I mean, I will always ask, how has that affected you? Because I think that if you're feeling like you can't unite with whatever is different from you, then you're being absent to yourself. So I will oftentimes and always actually go into, well, how do you feel about so and so? And that could be people at work, it could be friends, it can be intimate partners, it can be in a lot of areas.
Oh, okay. What about so we realize the importance of the father in the daughter's life. Now, are there ways the daughter can develop a positive sense of self and identity despite her father's absence? Is that possible?
Yes, it is. Well, we develop from absent relationships other relationships, and I think the absence pushes a lot of daughters into therapy, into finding out about themselves, and they don't have to see a man, because we all carry masculine and feminine, but in the relationship, in the analytic process, people find themselves. It's like a mirror, and together we try to figure out what's going to repair the situation inside so that they can feel good about themselves, honoring about themselves, not less than, but that they are feeling strong enough to fill in their personality. It really is a relational way that the repair to the absence of relationship gets met, which is why it takes a while. I mean, it just takes a while to develop trust, to develop respect, to feel all right about yourself. It's a deep, thorough, and exciting process in finding how to heal oneself.
Yeah, well, it's good to know because generally the consensus is that um, children, girls and boys, need a father. They need both parents in their upbringing. So it's good to know that where that's not possible,
Yeah,
you can fill that void and make up for that lack of parental guidance in that regard. So I'm sure a relief to many people out there.
it's true.
So, yeah. Now, on the subject of fathers, how and if to what extent, if any, can another male role model compensate for an absent father?
Can a female role model? Is that what you said?
No, let me repeat the
Oh,
question.
other male role models. I
Yeah,
remember.
yeah,
Yes.
another role model. To
Yeah.
what extent, if any?
Yes, of course they can. I will oftentimes ask people, did you have a grandfather? Did you have an uncle? Do you
Right,
have the parent of the friend down the block? What
right,
about a teacher? So, yes, many uh, different people can compensate for the lack. I also think there is something natural inside of us. So if we remember our dreams, there are figures that will come forward that are like father figures.
right.
Or children read books, they go to movies, videos. There are father figures there. And so they also help. They do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's good again, like you have all these other avenues they can explore. And once they have the guidance, I think that's most important
Yes.
to help them get there. What period in a daughter's life would you consider to be where the father's input is most necessary?
So I'm going to say it really should begin in utero. So when the child is developing in utero, the participation of the father emotionally, supportively, should be there. So from the beginning, a
Right,
father figure is important. Again, those people that do not have father figures are not at a deficit, but they need to find a way to fill in that part because we are naturally sperm and egg, and You can't deny it. So there needs to be that participation of the father really from the absolute beginning. And this, I think, is something that has not been promoted very much transgenerationally, culturally, is valuing the importance of the father, and in not in a castigating way, but in a way that honors him, and that he really has a lot to offer to his children.
Yeah, I think in the beginning, people see mothers, the nurturers, and I'm not trying to take away anything from that. Obviously, that's critical in the upbringing of a child. But for some reason, people don't see the father to some extent. I think society sort of puts them on the back burner, and especially in the beginning, which is, I mean, catastrophic from, like looking at results, from when children grow up to be adults, when they don't have fathers in their lives. So it's important, as you said, to have them throughout,
I
and
think I wanted to add to what you had said, because I think it's very important that the fathers have been, in a way, their importance has been negated. It's also been negated in the psychological, the analytical literature until about the last 25 or 30 years. So the value of father, it was all put onto the mother as if a father doesn't exist.
yeah,
And that is part of why I wrote the book. It's like, wait a second, they do exist and they're important. So why are they not more there?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons why we exist as an organization, because society seems to put us down in the back somewhere as if we don't matter, And there are many, many men who are disadvantaged in one way or the other. And, they end up suicidal and, in very, very precarious situations sometimes. So we need to be there for everybody in society and get away from this stigma that one group doesn't need our help as much as the other. So it's good that you've mentioned that, and it's something that we should all pay attention to. I'm gonna switch it up a bit now,
Okay.
and let's talk about dreams. Are there any in particular that a daughter may have when she's dealing with father's absence?
Again, there's a range of themes depending on what has happened to the daughter. Oftentimes, there will be a persecutor. There will be like someone running after, chasing them. So they're afraid. There might be monsters, vampires.
Right.
And also, eventually, the good father figures appear in the dreams. But at the beginning, if there's been a lot of pain, absence, suffering, abuse for sure, the dreams are often frightening. And once somebody figures out that they can bring that dream into the analytic process and it can be dealt with, they don't have to be so afraid of themselves. And they will understand, oh, right, I know what that is. And then it doesn't overtake their personality. And as a result of dealing with the hard, difficult dreams, they gain strength. So the dreams have got many different themes. When there's an absent father, you don't usually find at the beginning sweet dreams. They're
Oh,
usually disturbing.
okay.
But they change their tenor, and they change as people go along, and they change as people understand what's happened, and they are able to find dream themes which remind them of themselves. So there gets to be kind of like a red thread throughout the dreams.
Excellent. What about active imagination? I believe that's a Jungian technique.
Yes.
What times might this be a viable option?
I suggest it to people. It's like let yourself sit with yourself, see what comes up. Usually people will write out their active imagination, and it's like having a discussion with yourself, not a regulated one, but one which just flows freely. Jung used it to discover much more about himself.
Right.
And it's a way of getting into yourself without judgment. So, one of the things that does tend to happen when the father has been absent is a heavy self judgment, guilt, not recognizing the value of oneself.
Yeah.
And so, in an active imagination, some other kind of figures can come forth who would be helpful and help guide through the, you could say, through the labyrinth of life. So you can access a lot of different energies
Right.
within an active imagination. It's quite a lovely process where what you're doing is sinking into your unconscious.
Is it something like hypnotism?
No, it's not. Hypnotism usually is somebody else does it to you. This
Oh,
is,
I see.
yeah, this is sitting with oneself and having like a conversation and not knowing what is going to happen and not having an agenda, just having a free flow and see what comes. It releases emotion and helpful figures and is can be a guide. So it's got all of these very good qualities to it. Helpful.
Okay, that's fantastic. Now, are there some ways? I think this question. I mean, they're all interesting, but this one in particular. Are there ways a daughter can develop some level of compassion and forgiveness towards a father who wasn't around in her life?
Well, let's put it this way. Compassion and forgiveness also goes to oneself. I think it depends. And it also is a joint process. So it would also mean that the father would come forward with compassion and a recognition of what he has done to his daughter or not done. I think it also depends on what has happened between them. Some situations are really quite awful, and forgiveness and compassion goes to oneself for being able to survive, to understand, to make sense of one's life, to be able to succeed, to feel competent. That's where it would ideally go. I think if you just forgive, it's kind of empty. There has to be a mutual. Let's talk about it. Let's discuss. Because if we have compassion and forgiveness to ourselves, we are going to be stronger as people.
Right. Now, do you think there might be any, on this subject, there might be any justifiable circumstances which would not have allowed a father to be around his daughter during her upbringing?
Oh, yes, there are, of course. It's happening all over the world now. War, war, refugees, the migrations, disturbed families happens all over. And these are things that have happened throughout history. It's not that the daughter just understands, but hopefully, if the father is able to come back, he and she would be able to talk about it, and he would be able to recognize how she would feel, and she also to hear from him that he missed her. He wished he didn't have to, but he did go because it was war or refugees or migration, whatever. I think that what I'm saying is that the issue has a possibility of healing when
Right.
people relate and talk together about it. When they avoid, deny, project, it doesn't work. It doesn't work.
Okay. Now, I think we've touched on this earlier, but this question basically, as I said, I think you've already dealt with it to a certain degree. Based on your experience with male clients, what are the most common issues they encounter, and what subsequent success stories can you share with us?
So they do tend, now this is going to be a broad generalization, very broad. There tends to be a certain amount of addiction to the internet, to pornography, to substances, although that's pretty equal with daughters and sons. Usually this is also what happens, that the men that are addicted to the pornography or the internet in a secret way, usually they knew that's what their fathers were doing as well, and the fathers never talked about it. So the fathers didn't introduce the sons into a healthy sexuality, a related sexuality, a loving sexuality, because they probably didn't experience it either, and they didn't know what to do. And their fathers probably never addressed it either. So many of the issues that men come in with are intimacy issues, distance. They don't know how to get closer. They're uncomfortable. They also have issues with their body image. They don't talk about it too much,
Right.
but it is, I find it is equal to the women who will talk about their body issues. And if they don't talk about it, I will bring it up, because the discomfort with self must also be a body discomfort as well. And I think the more you can express, the easier you feel within your own skin.
Yeah, I think it's a generational thing, as you said. For fathers, I think they feel awkward to talk about sex with their children, so they rather, sweep it under the rug, or not, turn a blind eye, and the child has to learn for him or herself. So that seems to be a pattern that's been established throughout history, and it keeps going on and on.
Yes, and so that's why we're talking about it.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Is so that it will turn, because everyone that I've dealt with has said that they wish their fathers would talk to them.
Yeah.
And early. Don't wait until they've already talked to their friends for, who knows how many years. So it's an encouragement to fathers to really talk the basics of life with their children.
I agree. While we're on the subject of generations, do you see some kind of pattern or correlations from generation to generation with absent fathers in daughters, mothers, and grandmothers' lives?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I don't mean to interrupt you either. I agree with you that the generations, that's what I meant about transgenerational. The grandmother didn't have a father, and she married someone who wasn't going to be a related father to the mother. The mother married someone who wasn't going to be related, and the daughter marries someone who also is not related. It goes on throughout. The sorrow is that many men through the generations have not had anybody to encourage their emotional relationship. The father just was fine being the provider, but not the provider of relatedness. And that's what people have lacked, need and want. And all those fathers who were raised with distant fathers wanted a close father also. So we're all in the same boat.
Yeah, I think as more and more research come to light, we see a definite need for the father is supposedly just a material provider, but it has to be much more. There has to be emotional support and other means of getting connected to the child. Exactly. as they grow in life. They need that substance. They need that support from their dad.
Yeah.
Um, Now, we all recognize the importance of fathers in their children's lives. Do you think there are enough studies or research done on absent fathers, or do you feel more of both should be conducted?
I think that we are entering a time of change, which of course is going to hopefully bring out much more curiosity about what has gone on. How can things improve? Not just what happens in a negative way with fathers not there, but what happens in a positive way when the fathers are there.
Right.
So there definitely needs to be more studies, more discussion, more books. You know, when I began this just several years ago, there were very few books even devoted to fathers, much less absent fathers, or and the effect on their children. And it's happening more and more. More and more men are able to take care of their children. They always were, even if they don't know how. As long all they need to do is be open and start asking some questions. But definitely there needs to be not just more research, but more focus on the value of
Right.
parents, whoever the parents are, the value, because they're important. They teach children
Exactly.
how to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, this is a more of a sort of a comparable a question. For a daughter and a son, how does an absent father impact both or either of them?
You know what? The absent father impacts both. I have been wondering how much of a difference there really is. I don't really feel there is that much of a difference. I think absence that needs to be filled is the issue for both. And the effect on their body, mind, and soul is going to be there. Their effect on their sense of self, on how they are in the world, on how they relate to partners and friends. Very parallel in the effects when there is a present loving father and the effects when there is an absent father. So I don't see much difference,
Okay.
and I haven't found that much difference, but that's just me. Um, but you know, I'm just a small sample. Except I think the point is absence is absent. It needs to be filled.
Yeah, I think from history or experience would show us that absent father leads to a lot of delinquent adults. And obviously, your traits would determine, like men would more likely go to prison, while girls, unfortunately, may turn to prostitution or something, homelessness, be on the streets. Men might join gangs, boys might join gangs. So it affects them, but I would say in different ways.
Yeah.
But obviously, it impacts them severely in a negative way. So,
Yes, and the research, if you talk about research, the
yeah.
research has shown that people who do not have a father end up much more in prison, prostitution, but they all represent a loss of self, not really feeling all right about who you are, needing to feel belonging. You know,
Just
even they want to feel belonging and they don't feel loved. So, you know, you join a gang and they love you, right?
that becomes your father, right?
You bet.
Unfortunately.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Now, do you feel the younger generation, especially young women, have a realistic view of the importance of father's presence or male role models in children's lives? Or do you think they're too caught up in social media and or essentially female-centric movements such as the Me Too to have an impartial or proper grasp, or are they struggling to understand regardless?
I think they struggle to understand regardless because we all are born, and when we're born, there's a father image around. So if
Right.
there isn't a father, there's a father image in the mother or whoever the mothering parent is. So that image of father doesn't substitute for the reality. And is the younger generation less lost than older generations? I don't think so. I think that and I think you're right in a way there. People compensate for absence in many ways.
Right.
Have we compensated as societies for what we are lacking by being involved in our phones? So,
Right.
in a way, we're lacking intimacy, connection, belongingness. It's an issue of belonging. And so, if you don't feel belonging, go on your phone, check this out, check that, and you can feel, oh, okay, I belong. You don't belong in the right way, but you have a sense of belonging. I don't think the younger generations have it any easier than the older. And I think everyone is rather struggling with what they want and didn't have. And even when you mention the Me Too movement, there's something about finding one's voice.
Right.
If you don't have a parent that hears you, then how do you get to put your voice out or feel good enough? Yeah.
Yeah. There's a wide range of issues that younger people face. I mean, generation to generation, we all have our issues, but I think social media has additionally put a lot of pressure on younger people, and it sort of drives them off the wall with body image and all these different things. Now, having considering all these things, how do you think us as an organization, how can we help, if in any way?
Well, I think just the bit that I understand about your organization, you're very much, look at the title, Voice of Men. Men need a voice, and it helps to be in a group of men. I've heard men say this.
Yes.
Whatever organization they're in, they feel comradeship. They feel a sense of, oh, you understand. You get it. You also have experienced this. So I think that your organization gives men a right to be themselves, and how important that is, and to speak out for what they want, what they need, what they can offer. You know, pride in oneself is incredibly important. And if you're told that, that as a man, you're not so much needed as a father, that doesn't feel very good. But if you talk with other men and they have also had an experience, you gain a sense of confidence. I know I'm right on this. Yeah.
So you're absolutely right. Now we've had a group session once with a psychiatrist, very experienced, very renowned psychiatrist, and he said the exact same thing that you said. He said that in his experience, he found the way that men are best able to open up and come out and feel a sense of belonging is when they're in a group setting as opposed to a one-to-one setting. So
let me just add to that.
Yeah.
But could it be that both are valuable? So that in the group there's a sense of camaraderie.
Yeah.
In one-to-one, so in what I do, one-to-one,
right,
the camaraderie is intense in a different way. I think it needs to be intense. One needs to feel, really deeply feel connection. So the connection you feel in a group is one way. The connection you feel in an analytic process is another. They're both very valuable. We need them. We need them.
Yeah, of course. I think, as you said, one-to-one has its merits and it has its benefits. And in a group setting also, with men especially, because, men they're reluctant through stigma, or maybe some people think it's an inherent trait that you have to keep your chin up and, bite the bullet and these things and not express yourself. So both are important. But I think for men, as you said, it also is important in a group setting.
Yes, let me just add to that, because I think it's a very important topic of how men can express their feelings. Very often men will say, I don't have many friends because they only are into sports. All the guys I know are just into sports. And I want to talk about deeper things or bigger issues or my emotional trials at home or with my kids. And I think it's important that that part of men is heard. Not all
Right.
men just want to talk about sports. They want to have a sense of togetherness on a variety of topics.
Absolutely. How do you think each of the following would benefit from your book?
Ah,
A daughter, a mother, a father, and a son.
okay, so I think all of them would, but let me give you an example. Someone a while ago, a man, wrote to me on the email. He said, I've read your book and I find that I am an absent father.
Right.
To my 3 daughters, I don't want to be anymore. So I have benefited by reading the book. A mother reads the book and says, oh my goodness, I went along with the absence. I see what could happen. Same thing with the daughter and the son. So many daughters have said to me, I mean, this is extreme, but they have literally said, it saved my life. I feel understood. Same thing with the sons. I feel understood. And I think it's that understanding. Once again, there's a sense of belonging. I'm
Right.
not out in left field. I can be like others. I struggle like they struggled. And when you see that somebody comes through it, even if it's in a book, you get hope. That's the point of this, to gain hope, inspiration, ways to deal with the pain. And you feel like you can then. And that is valuable.
Of course, it is. That's something that we should all be mindful of and pay more attention to. I don't think we do that enough. Do you have any final message for any daughters who've currently facing this crisis?
I think again, I'm going to say the hope and the inspiration comes from self-knowledge. So I think that if whoever is listening or whoever buys the book will look at it as a piece to add to their knowledge so that they can grow from that, gain their own ideas, their own identity, and their own creativity, and proceed on in their life with honor, respect, and confidence.
Absolutely. Speaking of that book, how would you say that has been received by the public so far? Can you give us a little feedback?
Really well.
Excellent.
Really well. It sells on all the online sites tremendously. I was amazed, actually. And it has been translated into, I think, 7 languages now.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. So I guess that's encouragement in that regard. What's next for you in the field of Jungian therapy?
Well, I am currently writing a book on
Good.
fathers and sons. So this next one is fathers and sons. And
That's excellent. Very happy to hear that. I'm sure they would benefit tremendously from it. Well, we're winding down. We have a couple more minutes to go. I probably have a question or two left for you, but before I get there, I just want to give out some information about our organization, further information. We welcome anyone to engage with us, join our group, take part in our activities. I'm going to give out some information, contact information here. Phone number is 226-289-8784. Email address is info@voiceofmen360.org. And our website is www.voiceofmen360.org. We're all over the place on social media. You can pretty much find us on all of them. We have Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, and TikTok. We're also on Facebook. We have a group page. Please join us there. You can see our daily activities and feel free to invite your friends. In fact, we welcome them on our show. We have a YouTube channel as well. It's called Voice of Men 360. So please, we appreciate your support in whatever way possible. And we just getting back to you, Susan. How can anyone interested in exploring or learning about the Jungian perspective access more information or resources?
Well, I have a lot on my webpage, actually, and it's Susan Schwartz, Ph.D.com. So I have a lot of articles, and I have a list of all my books, and also people can get a hold of me. My email and text number is on my website. So easy to get a hold of. And I would also say, if someone is interested in Jungian psychology, go to the library, go to anywhere online on books, type in Jungian psychology, and there are tons and tons of them. And you know what? I also think whatever you pick, it's like right for that moment. So right. Go for it. Yes.
Go for it. Yeah, that's my motto. Do you have any final words as we close up here for the public out there?
My final word is thank you so much for having me. You had excellent questions, and it was very interesting. I hope it is as interesting for the people who watch and listen.
Exactly, my sentiments. So people out there, ladies and gentlemen, you have been listening to this amazing broadcast with Dr. Susan Schwartz, a Jungian analyst and author of The Absent Father Effect on Daughters. And we thank you so much. We really appreciate the time you've spent with us. And we want to thank Dr. Schwartz especially for the wonderful insight. It's been such a meaningful session. We've certainly learned a lot. It's been exciting. It's been rewarding, I would say. And again, thanks to Dr. Susan Schwartz, and to everyone out there. Thanks again for joining us, and have a good evening. Good night. Goodbye.